everyone. My name is Demelza and I am part of the development team at St. Hilda'S. Welcome to our final Community Week event. I really hope that you've enjoyed this week. It is amazing how many people have gotten involved from all over the world to celebrate being a part of St. Hilda'S. I'm really excited to welcome our guest this evening, the wonderful Katherine Parkinson. Katherine studied classics at St. Hilda'S before beginning an incredible acting career, which has seen her become a household name. The role Katherine is possibly best known for is that of Jen in the IT Crowd, for which she won a BAFTA, but she has starred in many roles in television, film, radio, and on stage, including as Judy in Home I'm Darling, for which she was nominated for an Olivier Award. Tonight, Katherine will be reading extracts from the letters of Ethel Collinson, known as Margot. Margot studied at St. Hilda'S for a degree in modern history from 1917 to 20, and for a diploma in education from 1920 to 21. The letters she wrote throughout her time at college are absolutely fascinating, not only because of the time that Margot was studying, but also because of the familiarity of much of what she writes about. Oxford traditions like May morning, essay crises, and frequently asking her parents for money. The sheer number of letters that Margot wrote is astounding, and I am very grateful to her family for allowing us to share them with you tonight. At this point, I would like to introduce my colleague Triona, our alumni events manager. Triona has managed to expertly whittle down the letters to just a few extracts that give you a brilliant insight into Margot's life and her time at college. So Triona, could you please tell us how you managed to choose what will be read this evening?
Well, I was going to say it was an immense task because there are so many letters, but it was immensely enjoyable. I know Demelza, like myself, really got involved in Margot's life, rereading these letters. I urge everyone to look at the wonderful blog that Margot's family have set up, or if you would like to perhaps work on the letters and read them more, we have the full collection of them in a detailed transcripts here in the college archive. One day, I would really like to be able to present a performance of a bigger proportion of these breathlessly enthralling letters. But for now, for tonight, I've combined quite a few of the letters and quite a few of the dates to help us relive some of Margot's experiences. Some of those being experiences all undergraduates go through, and others which are unique to her and her time and place during the raids and rationing of World War I. Yet all these experiences speak to all of us strongly today. So we'll move on from her very first impressions of life at St. Hilda'S Hall, as it was then, to her first May morning and 8th week, on to the 1918 outbreak of the Spanish flu, and then on to Armistice Day. And as a little introduction, I just want to read an extract from a letter from her school teacher. She was at Streatham High School. And Miss Thompson, her teacher, is writing to her in the summer before she goes to St. Hilda'S. So Margot has just got in, and Miss Thompson has some advice for her, which you will see Margot takes very much to heart. So Miss Thompson writes, as regards your doing the course in 2 years instead of 3, I have considered the matter very carefully, and I do not think it would be worth either your time or your parents' self-sacrifice. You see, the benefit of an Oxford course is that it develops personality. If you're going to work yourself to skin and bone, you may as well do it cheaply and in London. To do well, you must stop working now and forget all that you have learned. You must read interesting, light books and practice assiduously a decent epistolary style. Make a point of writing an interesting letter about nothing at all, at least once a week. Write newsy letters, not necessarily long ones, but letters that give a more or less graphic account of what you are doing and how life is treating you.
St. Hilda'S Hall, Oxford, 13th of October 1917, first Michaelmas term. Dear Mother, My room is right up at the top of the place in the roof. There are 3 of us up there, one a girl whom I met here in April. It ought to be very cosy. It is very small and will want a lot of things to make it comfortable. A tablecloth, quite a small square one, a drawers cloth and curtains, among other things. I shall accumulate these by degrees. I also need something in the ornamental way for the mantelpiece. I wish my little china clock still went. That would do beautifully. I had a very nice time at Miss Hallam's cocoa last night. There were 3 third years there, besides 3 freshers. I like the third years immensely, very lively. You remember the Miss Sadler who resigned her exhibition owing to private affairs? These same private affairs were matrimonial. She got married, silly ass. I understand we are not expected to return cocoa invitations this term, which is a blessing. We shall, however, want to have our own friends, just privately. Next term, we shall have to ask all the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th years. Also, you can have tea in your own room. You just go down to the dining room and commandeer bread and butter, milk and jam. I think I shall want my eider down if it gets any colder. I was very comfortable last night, but had my coat over my feet. So if it comes in very cold, I shall want something else. Love to Daddy and Max, your loving daughter, Margot. 19th of October, 1917. Dear Mother, very many thanks for your letter and also for the bank book, which arrived quite safely. I have used the green bordered cloth for my Moab, my washstand. It shuts up and becomes a kind of cabinet affair. If I have a visitor, I shall use the other cloth for my drawers. I shall want more cushions, 2, if not 3, but there is no tearing hurry. I keep discovering things I have left behind. Among them are a woolen vest and my flannel petticoat. Would you please send them along sometime? There is no particular hurry, as I shall not want to change my vest just yet. We had a lecture on Persian art last night, very interesting, and the lantern slides killingly funny. I sat next to the bursar and we giggled the whole time. And there was an intercollegiate debate on the desirability of passing Mr. Fisher's education bill. It was most amusing. One speaker at least had read the bill, the others hadn't. She got up and floored them with facts. The St. Hilda'S people practically conducted the debate. I understand that sometimes they do so entirely. Also, it is the only women's college that rose in a 4 or 6, I forget which, like the men, with a trainer. So you see, we are most progressive. Tomorrow, Mrs. Fawcett is addressing the Women's Suffrage Society at LMH. I am looking forward very much to hearing her. Dear Mother, I was very pleased to get your letter after the raid. I was most awfully anxious when I saw in Thursday's papers that they had been so near to home, but it only lasted for half an hour, for your letter came by that morning's post, much to my relief. People are beginning to pop now, i.e. yield you their gracious permission to call them by their Christian names. It is always done by the 2nd and 3rd year to the 1st year after half term and is a gradual process. It's awfully funny to see how they do it. Muriel and Kathleen have popped to me already. Also Edith Cowan, an awfully nice Scottish girl with whom I go to the Barnet House lectures. She is a 3rd year, so I feel considerably flattered. If people are not engaged, I want to have a 1st year cocoa on Monday, just the people I particularly like. Unfortunately, entertaining is confined by etiquette to your own year during your 1st term. It really is a relief. Next term will be the time. 27th of January, 1918, beginning of Hilary term. My dear Mother, I enjoyed myself thoroughly last week doing a little bit of research in the Bodleian proper. Miss Levitt suggested that I should read James I's original writings and speeches. As only books published after 1830 or so are kept in the camera, I had to migrate to the bod. The upper reading room there is a glorious place. It is beautifully light and airy, with desks about twice the size of those in the Rad. You just leave your books there with a slip inside those who want to remain, and the next day, there they are all right, and you can go straight to your desk and begin at once. The people there are killing. One man near me was reading music, one studying coins, and a third making abstruse algebraic calculations for the aid of a treatise on the law of chance. Meanwhile, I was getting deeply interested in the morality of James I. He was very moral. My dear mother, many thanks for your card this morning. It was a great relief to my mind. Was it very bad? Is any of the neighbourhood missing? We have begun our polite cocos. On Friday, Isabel Perkin and I entertained Gibby and Mercy Harvey. We were quaking inwardly beforehand, but they were awfully lively and we made quite a row. On Saturday, Joyce, Bronwyn and I entertained Kathleen and Muriel. We did not really become rowdy until after the 10:30 bell, after which we made such a row that the senior student, who was feeling awfully tired, came in twice to protest. Of course, she only made us worse, and we ended in hysterics. You always know where Kathleen and Muriel have gone to Coco, as the noise preceding thence is always tremendous. Your loving daughter, Margot. P.S. Love and kisses to Daddy and the kid. My dear Daddy, I have been learning how to punt this week. It is a most fascinating job, and I didn't prove so stupid at it as I thought I should. You can get beautifully wet at the job. The river here is most fascinating and winds and divides into so many different branches that it is altogether most excellent practice. You can punt and canoe from the garden of the hall. People row, scull, punt and canoe here, and they are very particular how you do it, as we have a reputation for style and have to keep it up. It is therefore not at all a bad thing never to have punted before, as they are most particular as to how you do that. I do get out as much as possible. In fact, I do quite a lot of walking. That's where a bicycle would be useful, of course. For instance, on Tuesday, I have a coaching at LMH at 5 p.m. It takes me half an hour to walk there, so the whole affair takes 2 hours, which for an hour's coaching in Latin unseen's is absurd. Also, one is liable to have a coaching which ends at 11 a.m. and a lecture which begins at 11:05 at the other end of town. All Oxford moves on wheels. You should see the High at 1 p.m. It positively swarms with bicycles. It's quite a tricky business getting across it. 5th of May, 1918. My dear mother, I have just lived on the river this week. 3 times I went out before breakfast, twice in the sculler and once in a punt. May morning was great fun. We were all knocked up at 5 a.m. and were on the river by 5:45. After some trouble, we got ourselves fixed by the bank. I was in the sculler with 4 other first years. The whole hall was on the river, with the exception of the bee, Miss Burrows, the principal, and Miss Coates, who were on top of Magdalen Tower itself. It was a very grey morning, a little misty and more than a little chilly, but quite fine. The river on either side of Magdalen Bridge was packed with craft of every kind. At about 5 minutes to 6, we began to see little bits of white and red appearing between the masonry as the choir got into position. Then the bells chimed 6, and when they had died away, the chant began. It sounded superb. The chant is the most beautiful I have ever heard, and the tone of the voices was exquisite from the height of the tower coming across the water. There was one beautiful boy's voice in the choir, and the basses were glorious, coming in the second line of the chant. When the chant was ended, the bells began to ring and the crowd to move. We, being a sculler and the river narrow, decided to stay where we were for the moment, and as there were many inexperienced, or apparently so, punters about. There's nothing like a punt for getting in the way. So we had our breakfast there and then, hard-boiled eggs, anchovy sandwiches and coffee in a thermos, getting first-rate amusement out of the dissolving crowd of boats, which got themselves rather entangled in trying to get away. At 6:30, we got shipshape and rowed down to Iffley and back before hall breakfast at 8:15. Meanwhile, my punting proceeds apace. I now want to learn to canoe. Muriel is going to take me out for a first try on Tuesday morning before breakfast. In the meanwhile, I am tanning fast. My dear mother, very many thanks indeed for the cake. your 2 letters and a note, which last I was very pleased to see. For the reason I did not send any washing last week was because I simply had no money to send off the parcel. Last week, being 8th week, was really most thrilling. By the Tuesday, we had found out that the best view of the races was to be had from a punt on the towing path side of the river between a new cut and Long Bridges. We used to see all the bumps from there, always 1 and sometimes 2 per race. Bumping races are really most exciting. Magdalen finished head of the river. It was easily best. By the 4th day, we had nearly distinguished all the colours and learnt to prophesy what would happen. During the races, there was a boom across the end of the new cut, opened only at intervals. 2 Thames Conservancy tugs panted up and down, clearing the course for each race and cursing the audience through a megaphone. "Get over to the towing path side, sir. The towing path side. That's not the towing path side. Look ahead, punt. There now, sir, you've quite spoilt that 8. That 8 only being the head of the river doing a little preliminary canter. Then, after it is all over for the day, there is a perfect scrum to get through the boom into the new cut again. You really could walk right across the Isis from the towing path to the green bank by stepping from punt to punt. Thereafter, a great exhibition of incompetent punting. By the way, Newnham have challenged us to race them. Isn't it topping? We don't know whether it can be wangled, though, because the Cambridge term ends before ours. What price a female varsity boat race in a few years' time? But it was fun. I never had such a glorious time in all my life. I'm so glad I did not go to Cambridge. Michaelmas, 1918. My dear mother, I posted you a card last night telling you of my safe arrival and the serious omissions in my packing. Later, I discovered several others. I can't imagine how I came to forget my shirts, but anyway, there wouldn't have been room for them. Supplies are distinctly short. Only 1 pound of meat per head per week, and no margarine except for cooking, for eating some weird kind of coconut butter, which looks like lard. If you can spare them, would you please let me have a candle and a box of matches? And please send me as soon as possible my bed socks. They were on the chair in the kitchen. We are going to freeze this term. Only allowed a fire once every 5 nights. We have got 23 freshers, 8 of them in 2 separate hostels, one in Cowley Place itself and the other up the Iffley Road. They seem quite a nice lot on the whole, but they do swarm all over the place. The floods are just beginning to subside and the island is gradually reappearing. It is awfully funny to see first the football goal post and then the field roller emerging from the waters. I hope it bucks up and subsides, for of course boating is at present impossible. I must not write any more now, as Muriel has just been up to know if I am going to Mansfield. Of course I am. Your loving daughter, Margot. My dear mother, many thanks for your 2 parcels and the enclosed letters. The dressing gown is beautifully warm. The flu is rife here. 5 of our year are down with it, and at least half the freshers. The bursar and most of the maids are also ill. We have therefore imported a nurse and a doctor, military, and are making our own beds, waiting at dinner and so forth. The bee is worried out of her wits. My cold is better, and I keep out as much as possible, but I won't guarantee not to have flu, as it comes upon you so suddenly. Last night, 7 of us went to Cannon Streeter's house to help entertain Canadian cadets, all flying men. Oh, it was great sport. We played blow football with an air ball, a most awful game that left you with no breath whatever and winking, which is not really quite proper. We tried to get them to sing, but there was no piano, so it was rather difficult. 20th of October. My dear mother, the mortality here in the town is very high. I think our own patients are taking a turn for the better. 2 are up and about. We survivors are doing all the work. Last night I made cocoa for 5 people and put them to bed. This morning Muriel came to me. She called me and I called the rest of the top landing, and then we both went downstairs to offer our services on the domestic staff. Muriel dusted the common rooms while I helped lay the breakfast. My cold is better, and I keep out as much as possible, rowing this morning and sculling this afternoon, so hope to escape, but you never can tell. 28th of October. I am so sorry not to have written to you before. I intended to write to you yesterday, but had such a bad headache last night that I thought I would wait and see if I had got flu before I wrote. I retired to bed before supper, and the bee came up and took my temperature. It was well below normal, so we decided it was not the flu. There are only 4 of the students still in bed. The bursar is all right, but weak, so is to be sent away for a holiday. The doctor is sending the worst cases home to their mothers for a few days, much to their delight. The kitchen staff is the worst. All the parlour maids and the cook are down. The kitchen is run by 2 poor, washed-out little kitchen maids and about 4 charwomen. We wait at dinner, carry round trays and help wash up. You would laugh at my present mode of life. I am Muriel's aide-de-camp. We share her alarm clock. We wake each other at 6:30. Then we both go down into the common room and work by the anthracite stove. At 7:30, I depart to set breakfast. Only I know how to do it, for all the parlour maids are in bed. It is rather fun, if a bit strenuous and hard on your work. Take care of Daddy and Max, for this flu is deadly, and most of all yourself. The only preventives are rest, warmth, good food, and freedom from overwork and worry. But seriously, I warn you, if you have it, I shall come home immediately. 3rd of November. My dear mother, many thanks for your letter and parcel. The cake was delicious, also the oatcakes, and I was overjoyed to see the stockings. The flu has now left us. All our people are up, including maids. Thus, we are able to celebrate Halloween in style. We had a gigantic cocoa in the big room on the top landing, to which we all went dressed as each other. After lights out at 10:45, we collected all the candles we could find, 1 for each month of the year, and put them on the floor in rows of 3, and then jumped over them. If your skirts flaunted a candle out, that particular month was supposed to be unlucky for you. You can imagine the noise. Then, when we had all done that, we pulled all the candles together and tried how many we could blow out at one gasp. Joan won with a score of 7 out of 12. This week is Old Students' Weekend, and last night they had a killing debate. The motion was that the mind of a woman student on going down is diseased. Daisy Adler proposed and Gibby opposed. It was killing. Everyone came, all the dons, even the bee. The bee suggested Cambridge as a cure. There were plenty of old students present to point the moral. 15th of November, 1918. My dear Daddy, many thanks for your nice long letter and also for the cheque, which I was very relieved to see. It saved the situation beautifully. Of course, it's just my luck to have been away from home both at the beginning and at the end of the war. We managed to make things pretty lively here. I was just returning to the Rad from a little stroll downtown in search of coffee when I met 2 excited people on bikes who had got some inkling of the truth. They rushed off to the GPO to see if the official intimation was out. They returned to say that it was really true and there was no more work for that day. We routed everyone out of the Rad and swarmed into the High and the Corn. I don't think any of us quite believed it. I know I didn't. The undergrads relieved the situation. They got hold of an enormous motor lorry and careered round the town on it, yelling and waving flags. We finally wandered home after buying all the flags we could lay hands on and had a most riotous lunch. Several people popped to all the freshers at one gasp by way of celebrating the occasion. After lunch, the whole hall processed round Oxford, headed by the senior student with the gong and the hall banner. Most people had flags or air balloons, and the bell was also trotted round. All the third year had ridiculous tin trumpets, and the rest of the band was provided by Combs, etc., included Jacinth with a poker and shovel. We got ringed round by the Balliol men and some of the Hertford cadets, which was great fun. We serenaded Miss Coate, who was now history don at Somerville, and extracted one of our number from the Cadena, where she was lunching with friends. Then it began to pour, so we went home. That night, the undergrads lit several bonfires, and of course, we went out to see them, the bee and all. We had to go in twos, neither more nor less. Of course, there was a great racket. You could hardly move at Carfax, and Cornmarket was packed. The bonfire was just outside St. John's, and all the time they sent up rocket signals and aeroplane lights. So imagine St. John's lit up in front by the lurid glare of the bonfire and behind by the very brilliant lights. Oh, it was a gorgeous effect. There was plenty of noise in Oxford all night, and next morning the Caesars, whose heads ornament the paling outside the Sheldonian Theatre, appeared covered with red and blue paint. On Wednesday evening, we decided to celebrate in style with a bump dinner and a dance. None of us had dancing togs, so we decided to have fancy dress. It was great sport. The bursar really rose to the occasion. I have kept the menu, so we'll show you it one day. After dinner, we toasted everyone we could think of and pledged each other in a lovely cup full of claret cup. I think it was lucky we only took a sip each. I really must stop now. Are all the lights up in London? We don't have to draw our blinds now. Oh, we ought to have a jolly Christmas this year. Much love to the mother and the boy. Your loving daughter, Margot.
Thank you so much for reading those, Katherine. They really are just so special. And thank you, Triona, for selecting them as well. What I'm interested to know is, were there any parts of those letters that particularly reminded you of your time in college or particularly resonated with you?
Actually, a lot resonated. I was thinking as I read them how I always intended to have a really good May morning and never did. I never did the things I wanted to do, like get in the river. But no, just sort of, I just feel very nostalgic reading them, because I think so much has changed, obviously, but also so little has changed in a way. It makes me miss Oxford, and it reminds me of having no money and writing letters or emails. Well, it would have been letters in my time to my mum and dad, sort of basically asking for stuff. I'm astonished to read that they could only have one fire every 5 days. That is quite humbling. I was amused by the reference to coconut butter, which is now quite popular. But you know how everybody moves around on bikes, and I used to love the independence of sort of getting to LMH. In fact, for tutorials from St Hilda'S, I think I got it down to 4 minutes on my bike in the end. But no, they're lovely letters. Thank you for introducing me to them.
I think oh, you go.
Just when I mean, obviously that's a very small proportion of the letters, and it is touching and hilarious and very nostalgic that so many of them begin with a request for money or a description of how money has been well spent, and therefore more money would be welcome. I still remember coming back to Oxford, 5 or 6 years after graduating, and having a flashback at a bank machine of thinking, is there any money in my account? And if I put it in, will it keep the card? Because I used to dice with that all the time. Or going to Tesco's on the Cowley Road to get £30 cash back with only buying some chewing gum or something, knowing that you didn't have £30 in the bank.
Thank goodness for cash back, because you could get the cash back before they found out you didn't have the cash.
Before they found out.
Yes.
But every time I thought something would happen.
I think we went to the same places, Triona.
I think
those tricks. I also do. You get a real sense of how much fun she had, because obviously, in a way, it was a more genteel time with the references to the cocoa evenings and so on. But the parties where they dress up as each other, and the sort of humour is really obvious in her letters. And having you get a sense of character with regards to Bursar, and you can feel how much she holds in esteem the principal, the bee. It's quite touching, her references to the bee.
Very interesting what a small community it was. I mean, no offence and only loyalty implied in what I'm about to say, but one wouldn't imagine at the moment sitting at a lecture at the back and giggling with the bursar.
No.
The idea that everyone on the staircase were all very friendly, and they're looked after by the third years, and then they look after the first years, and the principal comes to check your temperature during the Spanish flu epidemic.
I know. Gosh, yes, I know. That's quite. Yeah, I don't think I ever had my temperature checked by the principal.
No, I don't think so. We were both up in the 90s.
I was there. I think I matriculated. I'm terrible with years, but 1996 and graduated in 2000. I think.
So you were right just after I left.
Yes.
Whereas Demelza, are your experiences still resonate with ours and with Margot's coming that bit later?
Yeah, so I came up in 2012, and I think a lot of the fundamental things are the same. That sense of kind of being in part of a community. You know everyone in college, or an awful lot of people, certainly within your year, and there is that real sense of kind of camaraderie, and you do have a lot of fun. I didn't have the same issue in terms of kind of getting cash back, but I definitely remember always being aware of how close I was to my overdraft limit and things like that. So those things as students, I think, are just always the same.
How lovely that they had anchovy sandwiches or whatever it was on May morning with the coffee in a thermos. So definitely, yeah. I just ate from those vans the entire time.
The kebab vans, the bad vans.
Yeah.
One of my favourites, how Oxford's covered with the first ever coffee shop or the oldest ever church or everything, and lots of pubs and cafes say established 1745, and the Bab van that was nearest us said established 1992.
I love her description of the Bodleian as well, which is, I think, a genuinely majestic. It's a great experience, isn't it? I remember just being so distracted and so sort of overwhelmed by it that I couldn't really do any work the first a couple of times I went there. But I love how she notices what everyone else is doing and feels a thrill to be there doing her thing, because I remember feeling that as well.
I remember feeling just really embarrassed when I first walked in. I think I didn't know how to find any of the books that I needed.
No, I didn't.
Ask. So I remember just kind of walking around, and everyone, of course, looks like they know exactly what they're doing. You
get too embarrassed to ask, don't you? You get, if you sort of don't know immediately. Yeah, I didn't listen to the introduction because I was too busy staring at everyone, and then was too embarrassed to ask. Yeah.
I just left in the end. I did a circuit, left, and then eventually got up the courage to go again. But
I liked chain smoke when I was studying, so I didn't spend a lot of time in the libraries. But I remember definitely feeling the privilege of being in a place like the Bodleian. Yeah.
I love the fact that again, this is when you read all the letters, that so many of them begin with stuff that she has left, stuff that she wants sent from home because she's realized it would be useful, but also stuff that she meant to bring that she's forgotten. And I definitely have anxiety dreams still about an Oxford room, that I either have to move out of it really quickly or have to move into it really quickly, or I've been given it but someone else's stuff is in it. Do you still have any Oxford-related anxieties, Katherine?
Yes, because I do. Yeah, because interestingly, a lot of actors have the standard anxiety dream of forgetting their lines on stage, which I've never had because I always have the finals anxiety dream. It's been so consistent. I still can't shake it off. That's my anxiety dream. Even if I'm worried about a work-related thing now, it's always that I've read the wrong Euripides play or whatever it is for the but I also, because I didn't watch any television the whole time I was at Oxford. I don't know if that's still a typical experience, but I didn't have a TV in my room, and I'm so grateful now that I didn't have any technology or television, because the kind of timeless, kind of hermetically sealed quality to being in the Oxford bubble was completely the case for me, however many years later, like it was for Margot. And I think that's partly why I feel so nostalgic. I mean, I remember feeling sort of nostalgic at the time for my time.
Yeah.
And I think that's because you live so in the moment, don't you, when there's no television. And I mean, it was sort of appalling how out of touch I must have been with the news and stuff. I don't know. I think I read the paper. I hope I read the paper.
We'd watch the news. We watched whatever was left of the news before Neighbours.
Yes,
basically.
yes, I remember doing that too.
And if you wanted to get in touch with somebody, you left a note on their door. And if you just went to someone else's college to see if they were in, you couldn't phone them. So you just went all the way to Oriel or somewhere and left a note on their door and came back again.
Is pigeon post still a thing, Demelza? I know you've left. Is that sort of a thing that's gone? Like, so the excitement of getting a little note in pigeon post was.
Yeah, I mean, the pigeonholes I mean, my life revolved around checking my pigeonhole. It was always so exciting. Yeah, that's a really a nice thing. And then obviously there's like the Oxford mail, so all the colleges deliver purposely to each other as well. It is really nice. I know what you mean about the bubble. I used to find it really hard to adjust to going back home for the vacations. I remember, because if it's for eight or 9 weeks, it's just constant, isn't it? And you don't stop, and then you suddenly stop, and you're like, oh, I don't quite know how to do this.
Yes, and quite often you're going back into your family setup, so you have to suddenly be like you were before you left. So any kind of any evolution that's happened has to be sort of kind of put aside, and you have to go back to where you were 8 weeks ago with your mum and dad or whatever. Yeah. Because I was very, very busy trying to be quite a pretentious undergraduate, and then sort of would go back smoking my cigarillos or whatever and be put back in my place, which was very frustrating. But we got back into the swing of things when term started again. I love her mention of the Hertford cadets and so on, Balliol men and Hertford cadets and the Canadians, and the bump dinner and dance. The bump dinner and dance is still a thing, presumably, at Oxford.
Yeah. I like Margot was terribly tall. She was very tall, and in the later letters, she does begin to talk about when she gets better at dancing. I think really appreciating the taller men in her life. One of them who she describes as 6 foot long, which I thought was very funny.
I like seeing how much she falls in love with the river and all the river sports that she does. I slightly wish I'd done a bit more punting. I loved it when I did it. I was so bad on the rowing machine. We all had a sort of rowing test, and I think I was last in my entire year. So that quickly made me decide not to try and get into the rowing team. But I think I just wasn't trying hard enough, because I think there's a rower in me.
Rowing was really fun. I did it in my first year, and particularly things like just the competitions. Like obviously Margot's letters describe 8's week, and it's just so exciting. There's so much going on, and everyone's down at the river, and everyone's drinking pims and celebrating, and it's such a lovely thing. But I think with punting, you kind of get either the people who do the punting and the people who just sit and shout at the person punting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think now might be a good time to have some questions from the audience, if you're happy to do so. We already have one that has come in from a student, and they would like to know whether you went to drama school and whether you think that this is something which is very important when considering entering into the industry.
Well, I did go to drama school. I went to LAMDA straight after quite a 4-year degree at Oxford. The reason I did it was because I had some colleagues at Oxford, like Rory Kinnear and another actor called Patrick Kennedy, who were both doing the same thing, and they were sort of my mates. And I sort of thought, if I'm going to take this seriously, then if there's a training, I want to have it. That said, I'm married to an actor who didn't go to drama school, and who, I mean, in his situation, he was acting from sort of the age of sort of 11 on and off, which is another thing, another way to do it. But I'm not. I think sometimes the training is the best bit about the training is that it doesn't make you paranoid that you haven't had training. You see what I mean? Because I'm not. Although I retrospectively loved my time at Lambda and I did find it useful for me. I think it's a job that you learn from doing it, and I'm trying to teach one of my daughters to tell the time, and you just learn telling the time by telling the time. And I think you learn to act from learning to act. I'm still learning. So I don't think it's essential. It's very expensive. I couldn't afford it. So I sort of turned up and said, I can't afford it, and had to get help from their bursaries. They're very good at all that. But I think if it's a financial struggle, I definitely don't think it's something you have to do. There are so many brilliant actors out there who haven't trained. They've just worked, but for me it was a good way of taking it seriously and trying to convince myself I was allowed to take this seriously as an ambition. But I only did 4 terms, so I'm not fully trained. Yeah.
Okay. That leads us quite nicely actually to our next question, which is from Nicolette Jones, and she would like to hear more about your acting whilst you were at Oxford.
Hi, Nicolette. Yes, my acting at Oxford. I owe Oxford everything really, because I wanted to go to Oxford to sort of get into acting, but it was a sort of subliminal ambition. I didn't really know that. I hadn't had much opportunity at school really, and Oxford is just brilliant. There's no drama. I think because there's no drama course. It's just this hugely vibrant scene. It was just so exciting, and I think I did a ridiculous number of plays there, and I felt essentially like a professional actress, because you've got paying audiences at the Burton Taylor and the Old Fire Station and the Oxford Playhouse. Then you've got all the smaller college-based shows, the beautiful kind of doing Shakespeare in Oriel quads and absolutely mauling Beatrice in Much Ado About Nothing in Brasenose. I think I did that. I mean, the privilege of being able to do it and be awful, and in those days with there being no internet legacy of it, was great. So I loved acting at Oxford, and I did tons of it, and it's amazing. I came out with a degree really in the end.
I have been to some of the student performances, and they are incredible. So I can see why you say it's good training. We have a question now from Adora, who says, I think we did a pretty good job of sucking the marrow out of our time in Oxford. And if your kids decide to go to St Hilda'S, what are 3 things that you will urge them to do?
Is that Adora Nwandu, who I was at St Hilda'S with? Oh, hello, Adora. What was the question? I was just so distracted that it was Adora.
She said, if your children decide to go to St Hilda'S, what are 3 things that you will urge them to do?
To call me daily, to not take up smoking, but people don't do that anymore, and not to ride whilst drunk, the bicycle whilst drunk. Not that I did any of those things, but I used to finish doing a play and then sort of cycle home a bit wobbly, which I think back and think, oh my goodness, that was silly. In fact, most of the things I did at Oxford, I wouldn't want my daughters to do. So, but yeah, I think though it's a great place to study. So if they did want to do it, I would be thrilled. But I'm not sure if that's well, at the moment they're not even letting me homeschool them in the basics. So at the moment they're on my way off going to university. So. But if they wanted to do that, I would be thrilled to have an excuse to visit loads.
That would be very nice. Yeah.
Hi, Dora. Hello.
So now Jean Buchanan would like to ask, did you do the Edinburgh Festival whilst you were an undergraduate?
Yes, and I think I mean that I sort of include that in the sort of the Oxford drama scene is very sort of synonymous with doing the festival, and that really the festival was where I began, like a lot of people. It's such a great thing to sort of be able to take your own play up that's been written by an undergraduate, that will be directed by an undergraduate, and it's sort of the arrogance of youth can get you sort of there, and sort of it was brilliant, a brilliant time. I don't think the products were always brilliant. I don't think the shows were always brilliant, but it was a brilliant training. And yes, I think the Edinburgh Festival is a great place to be, and to try, plays and comedy. If you're into comedy, that's still the best stomping ground there is, I think, for young people getting in. And everybody goes there, all the agents and the casting directors go to Edinburgh. So if that's what you want to do, that's a really good place to go, I think.
Oh, it must be so exciting, so I can imagine. We have a question from Claire Watt now, who's actually a contemporary of mine. And she is asking, what is your favourite memory of St Hilda'S, if there is only one that you can think of?
St Hilda's I really enjoyed when I lived in. Actually, I lived out for a couple of my years, and I didn't quite enjoy it as much as when I lived in, because I had some autonomy when I had my own room, and I felt a little bit more in control. My happiest times, oddly, I think, were right towards the end of my 4-year degree, when I actually did some work for my finals. I think that was when I sort of went, this is what it's about. And just being on my own in my room, sort of reading Sophocles or whatever, and then going for a walk around the beautiful grounds and seeing friends. It's such a lovely balance. It's such a lovely life, and then when I did my finals, I came back after every final and played Macy Gray very loudly. Mark put another one over. And I actually oddly think my happiest times were those times in the end, sort of in a state of I used to sort of dress in pajamas the whole time and all the rest of it, but I just really enjoyed feeling on top of the work and actually really enjoying the work, which I'm pleased I got to do just in the nick of time, rather than just my distracting plays when I was there.
I mean, I remember my sister telling me that finals is the best time, and I never believed her, because I just thought, well, you've spent all your time just revising and you've got exams. How can that be the best time? But it really was. Everything seems to click, doesn't it, when you get to your final year? It just all comes into place.
Yeah, and exams aren't stressful if you actually do the work. That's what I realised. Yes, I agree. I thought my finals were my best time as well.
We have another question from Nicolette, who says, it was such a shame that Shoe Lady was interrupted at the Royal Court. That was because of the pandemic in March. And she asks, have other projects you've been working on been sabotaged? But she's very glad, by the way, that Shoe Lady was on the radio.
Oh, well, thank you, Nicolette. No, it was yes, it was strange. It was strange because the last few performances, things were all bubbling, and we still had people coming to see it. So they were quite memorable shows, because you sort of thought, well, they must really want to come, So it's quite a nice invested audience, those last few shows. But the thing is, it's not just the theatre that's been affected. A lot of filming has been having trouble, because obviously they can't get insurance. And so I've had, I had filming lined up in September. I was doing a series which is now going to be January, and so it's had, and I was going to be doing another show, a play, which obviously at the moment isn't happening, even though the set is built and all the rest of it. So it has been difficult. I've been very relieved since this announcement, the money from the government into theatre, because I was sort of feeling genuinely, really quite sort of hopeless about it. But I think that's been a great thing, and I think that filming is going to get back into it's going to start happening again soon. I'm doing something soon, hopefully. But I feel a little bit like everyone, like everything's sort of up in the air now. I don't really believe anything is definitely going to happen. So, but yeah, it's been a bad time for lots of regional theatres, but I hope that there'll be a real boom, in theatre. I really hope that will happen soon.
I hope so. I think people have really missed it. So I hope that means that when things can start happening again, they will do so on a large scale.
So yeah.
Yeah. We have a question from Fran Woodcock now, who says, do you think that classics has helped you since university? She's a fellow classicist and says that she's used to defending her subject choice. So she's interested in knowing why you picked it.
Yes, you do have to defend it, because lots of people make the lame joke about them being dead languages, and you have to pretend to laugh. I think it's a brilliant subject, because I think it's a sort of a real pick and mix subject. You get to do sort of lots of different things. You get to do philosophy, history, literature, and then there's a sort of mathematical kind of element of the translating. So I really do think it's a kind of holistic approach to your education. I feel like I don't feel like I narrowed down my subjects by doing classics. I feel like it's a really robust degree, and it's a genuinely inspiring degree. I wouldn't say, I feel like it just, you should just choose a subject that you find interesting. And I think I did find it interesting, and that's what I'm grateful for. I think it just makes me feel a bit more like I'm allowed to go on holidays to Greece and Italy. Really. But I suppose, I did study a lot of plays, and without realizing it at the time, I sort of kept my drama hobby separate from my subject. But actually, if we think about it, I was just studying plays the whole time. Comedy, Aristophanes, and then tragedies, Sophocles and Euripides or whatever. I mean, a lot of the literature I read were plays. So maybe it was all part of the same kind of desire, So yeah, no, I think it's a great degree, and don't worry about defending it, because the wonderful Boris Johnson has a classics degree, so we're all okay.
Excellent. So Daisy Dunn is asking whether you have used your classics degree at all. I suppose you've touched on that a bit already, but whether you're planning on drawing on it at all in future work.
I think it's quite useful for me that when I'm playing, for instance, I'm doing another series of something called Defending the Guilty, where I play a lawyer who has been very educated. I don't find it difficult to play those sorts of people, because I've done a degree and a degree that would suit something like law, for instance. So I don't feel like I'm winging it when I'm playing a lawyer, but I might if I was playing a doctor or whatever. I think I haven't used it in an obvious way, but like I say, I think I was very used to doing literary criticism of plays, and sort of kind of about objectives in the scene and all the rest of it. And that's all very useful doing plays. And I am beginning to do a bit of writing, and I think I'm realizing that it was more specifically useful than I thought. Just the kind of ability to sit down and work for 3 hours at a time. My husband he didn't go to university, even though he's very clever, and he has no concept of sitting down to I think we take it for granted, but just sitting down with your thoughts for a sustained amount of time isn't a given at all. So it's useful in all sorts of ways. Yeah.
Well, that's very good to know. And Avril Aslet Bentley would like to know, what is your favourite role in your acting career so far, and why?
I think I'd have to say I really enjoyed playing Judy in Home I'm Darling recently. I would say I have my most affection for her as a character, because she's got a very ingenuous nature. But I probably enjoy playing people with the opposite sorts of nature just as much. And really enjoyed doing another theatre part in Terry Johnson's Dead Funny, where she was, you know, quite an embittered person, but it was just very funnily written. So, but I would say it would have to be Judy in Home Mom Darling. Yeah, I like the costumes as well.
Well, I think that is all we have time for this evening, which I'm really sad about because I think we could just keep on going. So I just want to say thank you so much for joining us. It has been such a treat, and I've really enjoyed talking to you, and I'm sure all of our audience have enjoyed the questions as well.
Thank you, Melza. Thanks very much for having me.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure. So thank you to everyone who's joined us and everyone who's taken part in Community Week this week. There's always more going on behind the scenes than can be seen on screen. And throughout this week, there has been a small team of us running these events from our homes, as you can see. So now I'd like to invite Harris, our technical officer, and Trina just to give us a small wave to round off our last event. Thank you very much.